welcome to Union Public Library presents Andrew Reiner, who we couldn't be more excited to have and whom we are very grateful that he was able to help us today. Andrew is the editor-in-chief of Game Informer magazine, which is one of the, if not the top gaming magazine, and he's going to tell you about what the future holds. Andrew?
Hello, thanks for having me. This is my first library talk I've ever done. I was excited. Debbie shot me an email asking if I wanted to do it, and I was like, this sounds like fun, and I love that we have a group of people here that can just shoot me questions whenever you want. I guess we're all unmuted, so we can freely talk. I think that's the way this is going to go. But as Debbie pointed out, I am the editor-in-chief of Game Informer. Just a little background on who I am. I've been there 26, 27 years. I don't like saying that. It's a long time. But I've made a career of it, and I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of video games, you know, about as well as anybody could. And I love writing. I love gaming. Every day I go to work, or I guess this is my office now in the house, is rewarding in that you just never know what the day is going to bring in gaming. You know, one day you might be playing a new game like Cyberpunk 2077 for review, and the next one you might be, you know, writing about a new Naughty Dog game that gets announced. You just never know. There's always surprises and interesting things happening in the game industry. And it's been, you know, this year has been in particular since 2020, since about this time last year, right? When the word of the pandemic or this COVID-19 virus was starting to spread, we started to kind of go, uh-oh, what's going to happen in the game space? What's this going to mean when everybody shelters in place? Because you have development teams that make these games that are sizable, right? From indie games, you know, the 5 to 10 people, you know, all together, a think tank working together, to the other end of the spectrum of something like Fortnite, where you have thousands of people working on content together that is, you know, supposed to be timely and supposed to be released in intervals. And that's how, you know, they keep people playing is a steady drip of content. So what we've seen is, you know, video games were one of the kind of big winners of the pandemic, right? And I know that's a weird thing to say, but you know, for us sheltering in place, we had a steady flow of great entertainment. And remember when Animal Crossing hit in 2020, everybody jumped on that because it was like a virtual place you wanted to go to. It was the ultimate form of escapism at that time, where you were going somewhere sunny and happy, and everybody had smiles on their face, and you know, you're just going about life, and there's no cares attached to that. Yet in the real world behind us, we're all panicking, like what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our lives?
You're muted.
Sorry, Andrew, you're on mute. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're muted.
All right, I'm back. What did we miss there? But the pandemic really kind of took a hold of the game industry. We learned at Game Informer how to adapt and make magazines remotely. You know, obviously online content, stuff like that. Streaming, you know, like we're doing today. You can have many people on a stream together. So the technology was there for us. Thankfully, you know, we were able to adapt very quickly and realize like this is going to be doable. We're not going to skip a beat in making a magazine or the website or our video shows. Quality is going to take a hit. You know, we don't have those nice studio cameras and stuff like that. But you know, for our business, it really we're thankful that we were able to continue on without too many hiccups along the way. Game developers, on the other hand, have been, you know, some of them have transitioned pretty well. You know, like Insomniac Games was able to land Spider-Man last year for launch. You know, they expected to do it quicker than that, but, you know, they came in pretty hot and finishing that. And I can tell you there's games that I've been talking to developers and publishers about that were supposed to launch last holiday, so like last November, that still haven't been announced. So this is a major delay. They've been pushed back years. You know, just their planning has been upended completely. And every developer is different. And what we've seen is a lot of games were getting pretty close. Those games have released. But we had PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S launch last year, which is, I think, a miracle that we were able to get these systems out. I know people are still frustrated they can't get them. You know, the manufacturing process has been upended a little bit, but usually when a console launches, what happens? We're playing new games on it that are made for those consoles. We had some at launch, but there hasn't been a lot after that, right? Like January has been, this spring has been pretty dry in terms of new releases. There's good stuff coming, like Little Nightmares just hit. You know, we just gave that a Little Nightmares 2. We just gave that a really great review of 9.25 out of 10. It's a game everybody should play if they haven't. The first one and the second one, great platformer, kind of spooky experience. But after that, you know, it really dries up. And I think what's going to happen, what we're seeing is a lot of developers and publishers are kind of eyeing summer. And usually we get pretty solid release dates. But right now, when we're talking to companies, we think we'll be between March and July. You know, like that's how uncertain they are in terms of landing these games during the pandemic and having their teams spread out and, you know, across the world even sometimes. You know, like they have many studios working together. It's not just, you know, Sony Santa Monica is just working on God of War 2. They have other studios that are creating assets for them, and everybody has to kind of come together and figure this out. And yeah, it's like I said, every studio is going through different processes and trying to figure this out. But it looks like gaming's going to start picking up again in the summer. We have some big releases coming in May with Resident Evil Village, which looks fantastic. It looks like that's on track. We just, on our newest cover of Game Informer, announced Mass Effect Legendary Edition is coming May 14th. And that is a remaster. You know, it's not a new game. It's the great trilogy, one of the best gaming trilogies of all time, coming back, and will be playable on, you know, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and then the last gen versions of those as well, and PC. And then Deathloop, the new game from Arcane Studios, which, you know, has temporal time loop kind of stuff going on, looks really cool. That is also coming in May. So I think that's going to be kind of the beginning of kind of an avalanche of great games coming, you know, where I think everybody's gonna be like, oh, there's not enough time to play games right now. In these slow months in the spring so far, we're all just kind of catching up, right? Like we're going through our back catalogs. Like this is actually kind of great because we always have stacks of, you know, well, we don't anymore. It's in a digital space, but dozens of games that we buy and then we just never play, right? Or we get an Xbox game with gold or a PlayStation Plus game and we just never touch it. Now we can, you know, it's slowed down a little bit. It'd be nice to get some games to play on these new machines. You know, I really want to take my PlayStation 5 for a true test drive, right? Like it just doesn't feel like we've done that yet because we're not truly getting games that are made specifically for that. We have Spider-Man is straddling both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, right? Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, that's going to be made just for PlayStation 5. Still doesn't have a release date. It's supposed to be soonish, but we just don't know yet. You know, what's going to happen with that release date. I'm hoping that's maybe a summer time frame, just not announced yet, but we'll have to wait and see. And then on the Xbox side, I just don't know what there is, right? Like we're waiting for Halo. That game was delayed a year. You know, it was supposed to be launched. Microsoft talked about when they announced Xbox Scarlet as the code name for Xbox Series X, it was always with Halo. They were in lockstep, right? It was like, this is going to be the machine. It's a return to form for Halo. They were selling that system on Halo, you know, as the experience you need to play. And we get into late summer and they're like, we're delaying it. And then as fall approached, they're like, well, we're delaying it a full year. You know, we're not going to see this game until next holiday, this fall now. So it's rough. You know, we have these new systems and we don't really have new games that take advantage of them yet. And that is very much from the pandemic, you know, really kind of coming in and upending the game cycles, the development cycles that are that usually, you know, load up the holiday season for us. This one was pretty light. You know, it was mostly us. The biggest game we played was refreshing the browser, trying to get a system into our cart so we could get it. But you know, for people that haven't yet, you know, it's not the end of the world because there isn't a lot yet. So if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free, jump in. Debbie, I don't know how you want to run this.
I think it's
I
going
can answer anything from my job to journalism to games coming out, games of yesteryear, you name it.
I think people can jump in.
All
So
right.
does anyone want to jump in?
I would. I'd like to get your take on crunch culture. We've talked about delays, but I know, but I also know there's so many companies that are rushing to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
The big one in my head is CD Projekt Red versus other companies which have a more worker-friendly policy like Supergiant.
Yeah.
I just want to get your take on it.
Yeah, it's, it goes all the way back to the days when I started at Game Informer. We crunched. We had, I don't know what we were doing back then. We had like a 60-page magazine. Now we're, 84, and we don't crunch at all. We do as close as we can 40-hour work weeks. That said, when you get a game like CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 to review, that's a 100-hour game, 80-hour, depends on how you play it, right? Maybe 40, it depends, but that's a lot of time. Like, I envy film critics because they know every movie is going to be 2 to 3 hours, right? They go into the theater or at home now and they watch it, they can pump up their review. Games, publishers and developers aren't telling you how long a game is. When I played Last of Us Part 2, I was 15 hours, and that thing went on for like 25 hours. It was like, goodness, it's my game of the year last year. I'm not complaining, but it was like, wow, I'm up till 3 a.m. Is that crunch? No, that's your love of the hobby kind of taking over. And then it's to a degree, it kind of is though, where you're working overtime to make this game review or your article or whatnot. But back in the day, to my point is, we used to crunch a lot in making that magazine. Like, we were it was constant that we were working, and you burned out, like you were no longer efficient. And so that was one of the things, when I kind of took over as executive editor at Game Informer, was we removed second opinions. We used to have 2 critics on every review, but that was just killing us. And we really needed to get it to 40 hours. And at that 40-hour point, you feel comfortable. There's days you're not as creative as you would be, but I feel by and large, limiting the time you're working, you're way more creative. So I am 100% against the crunch culture. I love what Supergiant's doing. I get it. Like, sometimes it's like, our backs are against the wall. Our budget, is depleted. We got to launch this game. You got to make calls, but you got to think about the people, their lives. You're getting better results at, there's study after study that, just the human brain can only take so much, and the body can only take so much. So I hope that answers your question. It's I really hope developers can find a way to streamline their development processes to avoid crunch as much as possible. Some people just do it out of the love of what they do, though, right? Like, they work around around the clock, and you have to tell those employees to go home, but that's what they want to do with their time. So there's a fine line sometimes, but even for those people, they're probably better off going home and getting a good night's sleep and seeing their families and enjoying life, and then going back to work.
Yeah, I also have a question as well. Sort of backing off what David said about CD Projekt Red. Recently, I just want to know a bit about your thoughts on the recent drama about the recent hacking with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk. I know that there was like a lot of drama around it to begin with, but now recently, I'm sure you probably saw where CD Projekt Red, like, a lot of the source code involving Cyberpunk and The Witcher 3 is now being held by a hacker. And I don't know, just what are your thoughts on it? Because I thought that was pretty shocking.
It is, and it's disappointing, right? On the one hand, I know a lot of people are disappointed in CD Projekt Red with what happened with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox versions of Cyberpunk, right? Didn't live up to the vision, but no company should ever go through anything like this. It's really unfortunate, and you don't want to see like HR reports or salaries of employees or the just personal emails. I hope this doesn't happen where this information is released. I don't want to touch it, and I know they said they're going to send it to journalists and stuff like that. Someone's going to print something, and there's a chance it's going to go viral, and we'll have to, talk about oh, the next Witcher game is supposedly going to be called this. You know, those stories might leak out. You saw that happen when there was like that big Nintendo leak, right?
Yeah.
With just in it, or you know, Walmart Canada, you know,
Yeah.
releasing a list of like 10 upcoming games. You know, it's unfortunate that's going to happen. You know, CD Projekt Red at least got out in front of it. You know, if they have anything private that, you know, they think's going to get leaked in terms of their plans moving forward, I hope they get in front of that too before this 48 hours are over. I think that's what, tomorrow morning.
I think so.
But we'll have to wait and see. It's and I just can't say it enough. It's just really disappointing to see that kind of stuff. No one deserves to have, you know, their entire business revealed. There's so many people involved. Look at that family.
Yeah, I've got a question. How does your job differ from when you were a senior editor to now that
I have
you're
a question.
editor in chief?
Oh, sorry.
From senior editor, I can't even remember way back then. Carrington Martin. It's a lot more meetings. You know, I my favorite part of my job is writing. You know, in art form, you know, you got a blank canvas, you know, your blank page in front of you, and it's a lot of fun to put stuff together, create articles, all that stuff. I don't get to do that as much, which is disappointing. I still try to, you know, as much as I possibly can get stories out there. But that's the big difference. It's just more planning. We're currently in the middle of a redesign of Game Informer. Since I took over as EIC, I think we need to move our company into the future, and you know, we're really thinking big, both with the website, our video, and then also the print magazine. There will be big changes coming, and you'll start seeing some examples in the next couple issues that come out after the Mass Effect issue, which just hit. All right.
Oh, I gotta say,
You had another question?
Liano and Marcus hires were fantastic hires, by the way. I love them.
Well, thank
both.
you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
they're great people. We have a great team.
Okay.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, you kind of answered it, but I was going to say, I think I started reading the magazine back in like 2010. I think the first issue was like Gears of War 3, I think. And so I was just going to wonder, I mean, I know you were getting into it a little bit, but especially as a result of 2020, you know, what's different from producing the magazine? I know you guys went from like 12 issues to 10 issues last year, but like other changes, I know your cover stories, I'm sure, have to be a different process, things like that. And how much of that do you think will carry forward into the future?
Sure. Well, I'll go back to 2010. You know, we were, oh, maybe it's before that, but we didn't have a website for the longest time. So we, you know, we had a long lead time. We had, you know, a month to make a magazine. So we were at like E3, and you'd see like the IGNs and GameSpots, and they're like running off to their, you know, their pop-up desks, and they're over there writing articles. And we're just kind of laughing because we're like, we're just going to fly back on an airplane and then take a nice weekend and then write them when we get back to the office. One of the big differences is we joined, you know, the online space in a big way, where we have the steady drip of news on the website. We don't have a team that's nearly as large as any of the others. We're still lean and mean in that capacity. You know, very trusted voices, a very tight inner circle of who's making content for us. But we, you know, we got to keep up with the Joneses as well, and so we have video, we have, you know, live streams like this, news around the clock if we can. That is huge. You know, that's just daunting. It's crushing at times, just how much work or things, you know, you got to pick and choose what you do. You got to pick your battles and what you're focusing on. That's been the hardest shift for us is figuring out what matters, and still trying to land a magazine on, you know, deadline every month is tricky. But I think we've kind of got it down to a science, and you know, we're going to upend that a little bit with the redesign and try some new things, but you know, they're calculated risks. We're not going to be you know, upending the table and just being like, here's the new thing. You know, it's going to be a lot of what you know and love of what we've done in the past with so I hope some innovative ideas on top of that.
Cool. Thank you.
I think you're also asking about the pandemic of 2020.
Yeah,
What kinda
just like
carries
what
forward?
changes, yeah, things like that.
So working remotely, we you know, we have an office. We want to be together for our videos, and kind of brainstorming, but we don't have to, you know, like this works just as well. Our meetings look a lot like this, and they work just as well as sitting and, you know, being together. So we're you know, and I think I heard somewhere on NPR or something like that, they're estimating like 1 out of every 6 people are going to be working at home now, you know, after the pandemic's done. So, you know, that's a big shift in our world, and we're right there with Game Informer. If you want to work remotely, you can. And, you know, to Carrington's point earlier, some of our new hires were made with the pandemic in mind. Leanna and Marcus, you know, they're both remote. They won't be in Minneapolis with us. And that's just by design of, you know we can get the same amount of content, same great content, doesn't matter where they are. And that also works with downloadable games now. In the past, you used to get sent discs to the office. You know, you were waiting on the FedEx driver to get you your game to review, Final Fantasy X or whatever. And now, you know, you just download it, and hopefully your internet speed is okay to get it within a reasonable amount of time. Okay, more questions?
Andrew, what's been the most disappointing game for you? You know, you said not a lot of games have come out. Like,
I was gonna ask that.
Like, what have you been like? I feel like you've been pretty positive so far, but like the Avengers got terrible reviews, and like, you know,
I liked
Cyberpunk.
Avengers. I liked Avengers as a single player or a co-op story experience that is finite. You know, I like that Ms. Marvel story. I thought that was really well done. As a ongoing game, it's been terrible. So it's you know, they didn't deliver upon their promise. So that there's a bit of negativity for you. I'm a pretty positive guy by and large.
Midwest guy.
Yeah, I did just play that new werewolf game that came out that I gave a 5 out of 10. So, you know, you guys know the academic scale for grading. That's an F. You know, by and large, as editor in chief, I get to kind of pick the games I play, and I tend to now play ones that are going to be pretty good, and you know, focus on what we think are the games we should be writing about.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
How do you rate games? Like, is there something that you go based off, or like do you just rate it by yourself?
Like a rubric?
Rate it by yourself.
Yeah, like a rubric. Kind of like that.
Yeah, you just kind of rate it by yourself. You know, you kind of learn as you go. That's one of the big things you learn as a critic is, you know, your scale, your internal scale. You kind of have your own, you know, I have, like we talked before we started recording, my favorite game right now is Overwatch. I would give that a 10. That's the top of my scale right now. Overwatch is fantastic. The Zelda games are right there. I think those are 10s, right? Mass Effect right below it. You know, like you start getting your scale, and then as you play new games, you just kind of figure out where you think those are, you know, like where that kind of fits in the Game Informer framework. You know, like you're not
Is there a
basing
limit
it
to
on,
how many 10s out of 10s you can make?
No, I got made fun of a lot in the past because I think I gave like 14 10s, the most in Game Informer history.
Oh wow.
I've been there since, you know, pretty much the start. So but everybody was like, you just like games too much. And I was like, that's not a bad thing. Trust me. Liking games is a good thing. Enjoying entertainment. That's what it's about. We want to put games in front of you that you should be playing, right? We do the dirty work. We play the games, or sometimes the fun work, right? But we play them and let you know if you should as well.
How long do you play a game before like you actually get rated?
You want to see the credits. It's a story kind of based game. It's different for every game. It's weird because, you know, some games the credits roll, but that's just the beginning if it's an ongoing service, right? We just talked about Avengers a little bit. That's an example where it's just like, well, I'm basing it on what's here on day one. My review works for day one. They update the game 2 weeks later. It's a whole different game already, right? So your reviews are very much a moment in time. You know, it's like, this is how it was when I played it. Hopefully it helps you as you move forward. We've talked about in the past, do we keep updating our reviews? But then that becomes a full-time job if you're critiquing something like Fortnite or Overwatch even, right? So every update, it's like, well, is this good or bad? You know, that way you need the Fortnite editor at Game Informer. Not a bad idea given how popular the game is, but we just don't have those resources.
We have a question. Have you ever felt pressured to rate a game higher by peers or companies?
By companies, no.
Or peers?
I mean, you get razzed by peers if like you like a game and they don't like it. I've had I reviewed a Enter the Matrix game back in the day, which I liked and I thought it was good. And one of my coworkers at the time, Justin Leeper, is like, "Cool, I'm gonna go pre-order it." And he pre-ordered it. He got it that day, and then the next day when he came in, he's like, "I hate this game. It's terrible. Your review's wrong." I was like, "It's my opinion." um, so no, never pressure from companies. Disappointment, or they might want like a quote to use or whatever in their marketing. That's the extent of it. Like you never run into, there's all this internet culture of people saying like, "Oh, they're on the take" or whatever, and it's like, no. There are thousands of people reviewing games, and everybody is just doing it the same way. Like there's nothing else to it other than just your personal opinion.
I have a question from somebody who knew you were going to be here, and I may not say it correctly. Where do you see tabletop games heading with more feminization of games?
What was that? It's
feminization, female, and where do you see the tabletop games heading with that?
Tabletop games.
Yeah.
Is like pen and paper dice games. Is that what we're talking, or are we just talking?
I'm not sure what they meant. They asked me to ask
pen and paper. I think pen and paper. That's what we're referring. Yeah.
Boy, that's not a question I can answer. I can speak to the video game space where I think hopefully we see more equality. I love when you have character creators where you can really go deep and do whatever you want. Pen and paper, I don't know. Like I don't play a lot of that. My girlfriend and I play a little bit, but we're playing like Patchwork and stuff like that. So I unfortunately can't speak to that. I'm not well versed in that.
That's okay. Another person asked about the normalization of social interaction in gaming evolving. How do you see it moving in the future?
Socialization of?
Normalizing of social interaction.
Oh, and are you saying like voice chat in games, stuff like that, or?
Sure.
I'm not sure.
Or I think they mean how people are connecting to each other over games.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we see some great examples right now of just these wonderful gaming communities. People. Some of the people in here are actually from plants from my gaming clan of my Overwatch group that I play with, and I've gotten to know and love as humans through games, right? Like, so I think there are those great connections that can be made just for a love of game, whatever game you're playing. Voice chat can be toxic. We still need to figure out solutions there. My daughter started playing Fortnite, and she's young, she's 7, and I was like, I'm gonna roll the dice, see what happens. And the second she jumped in, the mics were on and people are screaming profanities, and I had to quickly go in and mute it. And it's just like, it still can be really toxic and a bother for families for sure. But we do have the tools in place to be able to mute those things. I did not do my due diligence beforehand to properly get that system set up for her. It was very much let's just see what happens, see if you like the mechanics. I didn't even think about the community aspect of it at that time. Games are just big beasts. There's just tons and tons and tons to them. But I think we are going to be connected more in the gaming space as we move forward. Seems like most developers are trying to put in online elements, living games. That's something you hear a lot about, of like the Fortnites that just keep going. And what really kind of makes those compelling is you do kind of develop those relationships with people, players that you want to be with for the best path to success in these games. I think that's fantastic. It's just we really need to kind of get some better parameters in place for how we moderate and how we ensure that people are not at risk. And all it takes is one moment of frustration, and I've seen it in Overwatch a lot. Where just someone will just kind of lose control and start screaming stuff, and all of a sudden you have people arguing, and you just want to get out of there, right? Like, you just don't want to be a part of that, and there's no way to pull that in. There's no way. There's no one there to keep the peace, like, or to, turn off their mics, or, you got to do that manually, but everybody involved, if their mics are on, are going to be hearing this. Hope that answers the question.
Sure. Joey has a question. Is that right? Did we lose Joey? I'll give Joey a chance to come back on. Is there somebody, Bruce asked if there's a particular game creator you think we should be keeping an eye on in 2021?
Ooh.
Joey, I'll get back to you.
Particular game creator. Are we talking an individual creator or a studio?
Not
If it's
specified.
individual creator, Axiom Verge 2 is created by one person. And I'm always fascinated by that. And those games are awesome. If you like the Metroids, keep your eye on Axiom Verge 2. I would say I'm really curious to see this year's Far Cry, whenever that's, hopefully it's this year. That one had a release date and it's slipped, right? It's just kind of floating. Arcane Studios, that's another one with Deathloop. I love new IP. Getting new experiences that can, take us in directions we haven't seen. And I think that time loop system they have sounds really cool. You have 24 hours to take out 8 targets, and you got to figure it's like what do they call it? A death puzzle, where you have to figure out the proper path to be able to succeed. It almost sounds like a typical Nick Cage movie that probably wouldn't do well at the box office, but I think it should succeed in the game space. It sounds cool, and that developer Arcane always has really cool worlds that you can kind of get yourselves into.
Joey, do you have a question? Okay. How about somebody else?
I guess I had a question.
Dylan, go ahead.
I guess wondering your take on VR games, and do you think if they're going to be ramping up in the near future, or do you think they've come to a stalemate?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something to talk about a lot at Game Informer, where we really think it's at its inception right now, and it does feel like it's been around for a while now, right? Like we have the Quest 2, like we have all these different units. PlayStation VR is at the end of its cycle already, right? But we are just getting started, and I think we are going to start seeing headsets not unlike the glasses you're wearing now. Convenience, the feel, the form fit are going to be key factors in driving this forward. Right now, the big box on and just being kind of blind to what's going around in your environment can be a struggle, right? And especially if kids around there messing around with you, or you might hit them or whatever. But I think we are really at the inception point. And you saw, I don't know if you've played Half-Life Alyx from Valve, but that is the first true AAA VR game that really shows how dynamic and awesome virtual reality can be in the game space. Right now, we're seeing a lot of stuff that's short, 30-minute experimental types of games, and those are great. We're just learning. It's a whole different medium than games. Even though you're running around doing similar things, once you put that headset on and you get in that world, it's different. Like the experiences you can have there are very different than you can on your TV or a flat surface. And I think we're just going to keep moving in that direction. And I think we will see Sony going back in it with PlayStation 5. I'm really hoping they do PlayStation VR 2 or whatever they call it. And then I also think, Microsoft has to be looking at VR as some kind of option, either partnering with like an Oculus or something like that, or making one of their own. Because I do think, go ahead.
Well, I know back in the day they had the Kinect for Xbox. I don't know if they're ever going to bring that back or
they should.
They probably won't.
Or probably do something
Kinect
new.
But I love it when we have experimental stuff like that. Rarely do we see an experiment go beyond one game. Think about all the light guns from the past. You remember the NES Zapper, the Super Scope for Super Nintendo. I might be dating myself.
Link's crossbow training.
There you go. The Sega Genesis had that activator where you're actually like doing kung fu in a ring that read your movements. All those things had applied to like one game, whereas Kinect actually was like they kind of positioned as a new platform that worked on Xbox. VR is well beyond that. It's way more established. It has a solid footprint and following. It's just we're cycling up, right? Like we're just figuring out how it can be cool and how it can work. And you see, it's great because you see these companies, everyone's like outdoing themselves. You know, like Oculus does something that's neat, and then all of a sudden, you know, like you have Valve or you know on the other end, like okay, we can do that, but we're going to turn it up a notch. 5-10 years from now, I think VR is going to be like one of the primary ways we play games.
David, do you have a question?
Yeah, this one should probably be fairly short. My first experience with Game Informer magazine is probably getting a subscription through GameStop. So I have to ask, did the recent stock market drama with GameStop affect Game Informer? Or yeah, I figured about as close. Or should we be looking for an article in the next Game Informer about that topic?
No, you know, we don't follow a lot of anything. I mean, anything that goes on with GameStop. Obviously, we heard about it and we're like, whoa, what's going on over there? You know, and then we ask our bosses like, is everything okay? Like, what should we expect from this? And it's so removed from who we are and what we do. You know, they're making the movie, and it's like, will we get mentioned in the movie? Probably not. Okay, and that's. I haven't even looked at the stock in like a week. You know, when it was headlines, I was like, oh, where's it at? But yeah, I have no other insight into it other than that.
I have another question as well, being that sort of like playing off from when we were talking about the new innovation, something like VR and and these new things. I'm going to focus more on the AAA space. I want to talk more about that being because recently I saw a lot of people were talking about the reports from IGN where they talked about how the Nemesis system that Warner Brothers like Shadow War, after 5 years, they finally got a patent for it, and there was like a large percentage of the community just very complaining about like this is really hurting innovation. You know, a lot of chances for game creators. That people were even mentioning the issue with Namco, how they patented mini games during loading screens. So I want to ask, when it comes to the AAA space, will situations like this mainly, will more of these pop up, and is it just always going to be hard for AAA developers, or in your perspective, will it be hard to just like play new AAA games that will actually be really innovative, or much less so?
I always think like, oh, I think we've seen every type of example there is for a game, and then you know something like Katamari Damacy comes along, and you're like, well, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, like, and that gives way to a whole new line of thinking, right? Like from art design to gameplay mechanics. I think the sky is always going to be the limit in that regard. To your first point about, you know, like copywriting a mechanic, you know, like just an idea. I hate that. And you saw that thing with Bethesda with Scrolls, right? Who was that? The creator of Minecraft, Notch, where he was naming a game Scrolls, and they're like, well, our game is called Elder Scrolls. You can't do that. And it's like, it's a word. Or Alien, you know, like Fox with Alien, you know, it's like, really, other movies can't have Alien? It's like, no, no, like that's not right. I hate seeing that kind of stuff. I really do. And it's just like, you could maybe patent like the name Nemesis system. I'm cool with that. Like, okay, that's yours. It's like naming a game, but the whole concept of it, like, no. Yeah, and like you said, that the Namco thing with the mini games that were in, what was it, Ridge Racer and stuff like that, where you could play like Galaga or Galaxian as you waited for the game to load. We don't have load times anymore, so maybe that's a moot thing now. That's the beauty of PlayStation 5 and the new Xboxes, is that you're immediately in the game. So loading games, you know, or loading screen games isn't a thing anymore. But yeah, just the concept, just the principle of doing that stuff, it's gross in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a
Andrew.
question.
Oh, go ahead. Steve.
Go ahead, Steven.
What other hobbies do you have other than being a game critic?
I write novels. I've written 3 books now with my friend Chris Cluey, who used to be a punter for the Minnesota Vikings. He and I have collaborated on 3 books. We've released 1. We have 2 more that are, well, one that we're right at the end of right now. It's a 1930s noir murder mystery in Chicago, which I'm pretty proud of. I think it's my best work yet, but we're polishing that up. And then I also play in rock bands. My current one is called the Rapture Twins, which is with, I'm one of the twins. The other one is Justin Courtney Pierre of Motion City Soundtrack. So look that up if you like rock and roll. If you don't like rock and roll, don't look it up, Stephen. You won't like it.
What do you play, Andrew?
Guitar. Yeah, but also tracking like drums, and you know, we the way we do it is we're in Justin's basement and we put it all together on a computer, and we get the kind of time code and idea, and then we'll go into the studio to record it. We bring our track over and they put it in there and we play to that, but we'll have a studio drummer, studio bassist, you know, or you know, pull them from other bands to play with us to put it together.
Other questions?
I'll go. I know you mentioned the Avengers game earlier and how you liked it. So I was just wondering, have you been keeping up with WandaVision? And if so, I mean, the last episode,
No
I don't want to spoil it in case anyone's watched, but like, I'm very excited to see where it goes next.
I am so in on everything Marvel. I think, and you guys can laugh at me for saying this, but in terms of the entire Cinescape, entire movie industry, what Marvel has done is probably the biggest event we've seen. 20 some interconnected movies that just keep getting people into the seats to see what's going to happen next, even though they're completely different stories, but they have enough connected tissue to make you care about this entire arc. Amazing. And WandaVision, like I'm watching this and it's like, I'm from the 80s, you know, so it's almost like me revisiting my past, and there's something to it, but I can't even imagine like the younger audience sitting there being like, what am I watching? You know, like, what is this? It's a sitcom with these characters that are Avengers. They're completely different, but then you start to see the little seeds that they plant in there, and they're rolling the dice there. That's a very high concept idea of it's going to take 4 hours to really, or 4 episodes to really show you what we're doing. And all of it kind of has that feel of the post-credit sequence, like, whoa, what was that about? But you just don't know where it's going. But now you do. Like the last episode that released was like, wow,
Crazy.
wow, they're geniuses over there. I just think they're every movie. I loved every one of those movies. You know, lower quality on some of them, like Thor 2, but a lot of them though, I just walk out of that theater just like, that was great, can't wait for the next one.
For sure.
So I have a question. So one of my favorite games during the pandemic was Phantasy Star Online 2. So my question is, how do you guys decide what games to review and what not to review? Because I didn't see one there for Phantasy Star Online 2. So how do you guys decide what games to review and what not to review?
It is available time is a big one. You know, that's something I don't think a lot of people realize when they go to their favorite sites is behind the scenes. You know, we might have 3 people working on a cover story that's really complex. Another 2 are, you know, developing new projects behind the scenes, and it really just comes down to the number of bodies. We want to review as much as we can. We want to, you know, sometimes I played the werewolf game. That's terrible. But that you know, that was just a matter of I had the time to do it, you know, and it just happened that game was there. I wish it was Phantasy Star Online 2 that I was playing instead, but yeah, that's just what happens sometimes. We're very lean and mean. We don't use freelancers at Game Informer. We, especially for reviews, we want to make sure if it has the Game Informer brand on it, that you know it's a trusted voice that we've worked with, that we know is up for the task.
So I suspect you have the job that everybody on this call would like to have.
Why is it I have this job?
No, I expect that everyone on this call would like to have your job. Can you tell us how you got where you are?
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a long answer. So, so I went to school for advertising, art, and design. I was going to be a comic book artist. If I spun my camera around, all on these walls is comic books. My whole collection since I was 8 years old Every Wednesday I go buy comic books, and I really wanted to be a part of that. So I was in school, I was in college for that, and I realized I was in my class of, I don't know, 20 people. I was maybe the second or third best artist in my mind, like, but those other two people were better than me and in what I wanted to do. I would go over to their desk and be like, whoa, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. And it was that moment where I realized, like, I don't know if I have the chops for this, but I'm very creative. I love making stuff, whether it's music or writing. And at that point, it was kind of like, I'm going to shift. And I didn't know what I was going to shift into. And my parents sent me to a store called Sherman-Williams. I don't know if you have those in New Jersey. Yep. You do. Okay. They sent me to go get some paint or whatever. And right next door was the very first ever Funko-Land, which was a video game retailer from the 90s and I think into the 2000s. I'm not sure. But I was like, oh, I just want to see what Funko-Land's about. And I went in there and my mind melted because it was wall-to-wall games. And at the time, you were going to like Toys R Us, Walmart, Target, whatever, for your games, and it was a very limited supply. And here I was, every game from NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, up to Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo were there. And I was just like, it was like the light from heaven shined down. I was like, oh, this is where I belong. That day I walked into that store, there was a man named Paul Anderson behind the counter. The day I was there was the first issue he was in of Game Informer, and he was so proud of being in this magazine. The second I walked in the door, he's like, you got to look at this magazine. I'm in it. I had no idea who this guy was. I had no idea what was going on. I was trying to focus on all these games, and yet he's like bugging me about this magazine. And we just started talking, and I must have been in there like an hour. This is pre-cell phone, so my parents couldn't be bugging me like, where's the paint? But I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. This guy's super cool. He has this job where he's writing reviews for games, and I wanted to be a part of it. And he's like, your stuff. You should work for Game Informer. And right there, I was like, that's what I want to do. And he's like, I'm going to help you get there. I'm going to introduce you to Andy McNamara, our editor-in-chief. And I was like, well, I'm going to come work here. And he's like, well, I'm going to go work over there full time. There will be an opening here. You should take it. And I did. And true to his word, Paul sadly passed away from ALS, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, something like that now. But true to his word, he pulled me along, and I didn't know how to write. I was an artist. I wrote my own comic books, and I learned, if I applied today with the mindset I had or the skills I had back then, I would never be in this position. I would not have the skill set to do it. But since it was such a jet set thing, these game magazines were just coming online. They were looking for the kids, like living in the basements, they wanted the knowledge more than the writing chops. And the writing was awful back then. It was terrible. Like I go back and look at there was terrible editing, all that stuff. And it was bad, and we learned as we went. And it probably took me a good 15 to 20 years to figure out really how to write. And it was writing under fire. And I made a lot of mistakes and I did a lot of dumb things. And we all did, not just us, but every publication. EGM had ninjas reviewing games, just, you didn't even know who was writing the review. It was a ninja. GamePro, the game was good because the graphic on the page, it was a guy's head exploding because he was so impressed by it. And, we've come a long way. And now we have these writers, that were doing this are writing for New York Times, the Washington Post. It's so cool to see kind of this graduation of skill. Like I said, it's going to be a long answer, but that was my path. And never will this happen again. You need to have schooling. You need to know what you're doing. The industry is so big and established now that people need to learn how to write. I'm a rare case of success in the game space, but I'm so thankful that they stuck with me and gave me a chance. And at the time though, it was like my bad writing was bad all across the board, so it just kind of blended in. But yeah, we learned as we went, and now I think the writing's pretty good. But my mechanics are very different. Like I am not classically trained or like in any way of schooling. Like I just developed my own process.
Well, it must have worked. So Kyle, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask the question. Are you raising your hand? Good.
Yeah. So
oh, look at that girl. Aww.
So with all the years of writing that you've done, how do you overcome writer's block, or do you have any techniques to overcome starting an article, or just getting things started, not getting stuck on how to start an article or review?
Yeah. Even going on 30 years of writing, there'll be times where you open up a blank document and you start writing and you're like, that's terrible, and then you delete it, and my next one is terrible, that one's even worse, and you delete, and then you realize, I don't know if there's a such thing as writer's block, but you just don't have the idea, and you just need to divorce yourself from that topic for a bit of time. This is what I do anything else, anything to free up your mind, get your mind off it for a second, and then go back and try again. A lot of people will just keep banging at it, trying to make it work, and they're just making it worse, and they're getting more frustrated. So yeah, just giving yourself a second to breathe and step away and clear your mind and try a different approach is what I do.
Someone else have a question?
I just have a. Oh, you can go.
All right. I was going to ask, how has video game streaming sites like Twitch or YouTube, how have they affected the Game Informer or the game journalism landscape?
Game Informer in general, it's just another thing we have to do that takes up time and takes away from reviewing Phantasy Star Online 2, Carrington. It's just another box we have to check, right? And we love doing it, right? It's so much fun. The thing that really makes it special is being able to interact with people like we are today. It's as close as you can get to the community, and I love that. And just getting different perspectives and learning what people like about games, outside of our office, I think is really important. In terms of journalism, it's a whole different thing. I don't know how some people do it. They go for like 12 hours, right? And sometimes I'll tune in and it'll look like someone's been going for 12 hours where they're just kind of sitting there, like cans of Red Bull or whatever, like they've been going a long time at the end of their shift or whatever, and they look worn down. But it's a whole different thing, being able to talk and play at the same time. I know that sounds silly. It's like playing guitar and singing at the same time. When you're trying to compete, right? You want your focus there, but they're also entertaining at the same time. So I think they're entertainers. I think they're a lot of them are really great at it, but also they're pros. The athletes. In terms of being the best at their game, and that's awesome. So the people that can do both and excel at both, I could never do that. That's super impressive.
So you guys have anything that you would like to tell Andrew about your own gaming experiences? Or Andrew, do you have any questions you'd like to ask these guys? And also women?
Well, let's see. I'm going to scroll through the names here. Yeah, if anybody has anything else.
I guess I had a quick question about like indie game studios and how they've been faring during the pandemic, if there's any knowledge on that.
Yeah, I think that's I don't have any examples I can share today, but it is the same thing as whether it's a big studio of thousands of people or just a couple people. It is, it upends the process, being able to iterate together. Sometimes the studio is built under that kind of condition of we're all together, we're all making this together. What happens when we're apart? Can we still do it? How much is it going to slow us down? You got to worry about budgets in that case, some of these games on Kickstarter, a lot of those games, people fund them and then it's like, we're going to release it in 2019. And then it's like, wait, it's 2021. When's it coming? it's just hard to gauge, when you have these new teams coming together and new ideas. They mean well, with intent of, I want to release it at this time, but it's a hard thing to put together. And when you're separated, when you wanted to be together, that's another complication. So yeah, I think everybody's in it together, just trying to figure this out in this wild world we're in with this pandemic, and hopefully it's over soon. Both of my parents just got they're in Minnesota does a lottery for 65 years plus. My dad got his shot last week. My mom is getting hers on Friday. So there's progress being made in the pandemic, and hopefully it means, significant process, kind of like, we get one shot and then it's years down the road when we have to get another, but we'll have to wait and see what that means. But yeah, I really hope we can get back to studios being together, us being at conventions together, going to movie theaters, going to sporting events, all that stuff. I hope we can get back to.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Please, Stephen.
Was there any companies that just didn't like the rating that you gave and like just made a whole fuss about it?
Yeah, I got some angry emails, and you just ignore that stuff.
Oh.
But I if I don't like something, that's my critical opinion of it. That's my take on it. I realize, there's teams that work on these games for years, and they submitted it for review. They, whether they're proud of it or not, I can have a different opinion than they do. That's just how the world works. So
what does the email
people don't like
usually
my
look
reviews. On the end of the spectrum, I'll submit a review, and if I go to the comments, it's, you suck, like this review's terrible. You see that a lot, and you kind of grow at first you're like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't like this, but then you realize, like, I can't please everyone. Everybody has different opinions about everything, whether it's me rating the game or them reading my review, them liking my writing, them agreeing with my opinion on the game. It's, that's just the way the world works, and you just have to realize that. And once you do, you're okay in terms of being a critic that can get through it.
So I just want to thank Andrew for doing this. As I said, I was so stunned when he said yes, because he really knows his stuff. I want to thank all of you guys for being on here, and we are recording this, so we'll be having the recording available if anybody wants it. And if you haven't signed up for Union Public Library newsletter, all you need to do is reply yes to me, and I will put you on the list. Check our Facebook, check our webpage. Lots of programs. Tomorrow it's Frank Sinatra. I suspect none of you are interested in that, but not Frank Sinatra really, but Frank Sinatra.
I was going to say, like, how did you pull that off?
Well, it wasn't easy, but actually he was very nice also, the expert. So again, thank you all for being here, and I'm going to stop recording. And thank you again.